Hi there, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be using two of the new background products from the Simon Says Stamp Rainbows release to create ocean waves backgrounds. And then I'm going to use the Narwhal stamp set that is just from a release or two back to adorn each of these fun backgrounds as well as add the greetings. We're going to start with the Simon Says Stamp Waves Builder. Now, what makes this background stamp so amazing is that it is not a single image, meaning each of these waves is going to pop apart so it's easy to stamp each of them in a different color. I'm going to remove the foam backing from my MISTI, and place a sheet of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches smooth white cardstock in my MISTI. I already have some adhesive on that background paper, which has been used and loved, and that way it's going to help keep my paper from shifting. I placed the entire background in the MISTI, picked the whole thing up, and then I'm going to just remove the second layer for now so that I can easily ink up the first layer with my first color of ink, which is the Simon Says Stamp MALIBLUE ink. Some of these I may stamp more than once just to get a really good impression. What I love about this is that it's so easy to get this background that looks like a piece of pattern paper. I'm going to clean my stamp, carefully replace that second wave back into the MISTI, remove the first wave and put it back on the backing paper, and then remove the third wave. I'm going to ink up that second wave then with Simon Says Stamp AUDREY Blue ink. This is a layer of ink that I am going to go ahead and stamp twice. Now it does look blotchy, but in the finished card you can tell that it definitely doesn't look like that. These are dye inks. They are going to smooth out and fade just a little bit as they are absorbed into the cardstock. I'm then going to replace that third layer, remove the second layer, and then we'll remove the fourth layer. So as long as you kind of just keep making sure that you're lining up the layer you're getting ready to stamp before you remove anything, it makes it so much easier. Next, we're going to use Simon Says Stamp High Dive ink. The other great thing about this is you can create your backgrounds in so many different color combinations. I know rainbow is always so big. A rainbow wave would be fun. You could do any combination. I've got a lot of like aqua teals, blues, and lavenders in my card today, but definitely mix it up with whatever inks you like. So again, I've just repeated the process of cleaning the stamp, replacing the one underneath it that I had previously removed, and then removing the one we've already done, inking up the next layer, and we're going to continue this all the way down the panel. I have left all the inking in so you can see that process where we replace the one we're getting ready to stamp so it's lined up, remove the one we just did, and then remove the one underneath. And I kind of hold it with my hand so it doesn't shift as I'm pulling the next one up, especially this first time when they were still somewhat attached. So this was a surf blue layer, and then Caribbean blue was the layer I just stamped. We clean that, replace, remove the one underneath. Now this is the only place where I'm going to do it a little different. We are going to stamp the next layer. That's going to be some Simon Says Stamp Deep Sea ink. But before I replace that next to last layer, we already have it out for the last layer. So we're going to skip lavender and go to hydrangea ink and ink that up. And then I can clean both of these. I was using a chamois, but I didn't think that my stamp was getting very clean, so I just have a microfiber cloth and some Simon Says Stamp cleaner that I'm cleaning those with. We're going to replace that layer we just skipped, and then we can remove both the ones on either side of that. And then ink this up with lavender ink and stamp it right there to finish off our panel. Look how beautiful this is, you guys. I love, love, love this. And keep in mind, if you don't want to stamp each one in an individual color, you can simply stamp the entire background with one color of ink. I'm going to set this aside, and we are going to take another brand new product, the Slimline Wave Stencil, which is awesome for slimline cards. So I love the Simon Says Stamp Wave Stencil. I have used it for years and years, and it's one of my all-time favorites. So I love that they've come out with a slimline version. I'm actually going to die cut some smooth white cardstock using a Simon Says Stamp Slimline nested rectangle die. And then I'm going to tape it to the back of my stencil. And I'm going to take all of the same colors of ink that we just used to stamp the background stamp, and we're going to this time take those inks and some ink blending tools and blend the inks on our panel. I do think that if I would do this again, instead of using some repositionable tape to tape this to the cardstock to my stencil, I would likely use some pixie spray. These layers can want to move a little bit. The great thing about the Gina K blending brushes is I feel like they're really soft. And I don't think they catch on the stencil as much. There was one little area on the stencil where it did move a little bit. It's a little further up here in the panel as we're adding color, but I don't mind it. I don't think it's super noticeable. I don't think the recipient will notice it. You guys are going to notice it when I show it and point it out to you, but I did try to disguise it with a couple of the images we're adding to our card. So on this stenciling slimline, I started at the bottom and I'm working my way up. We're going to do the same order, just kind of reverse of what we did for the stamped background. I started with hydrangea, then lavender ink. Deep sea ink is what I'm doing right here. And you might notice I go back and forth between the blending tools a little bit more, just to make sure we're getting a seamless blend between each color change. And then we're going to use a little Caribbean blue. And I try to use a fairly light hand to apply this so we don't get any kind of big globs of ink anywhere. And then you can build that color up gradually as needed. And I'm eyeballing it. I knew that I had 8 colors of ink to add, and so I tried to just kind of do 4 of the colors halfway, and then the other 4 will fit the other side or half of our panel. Then we're going to move on to surf blue, which is a lot lighter. I did wipe off my blending brush on a cloth to try to remove some of that darker ink. And then we're going to apply this. And blend into our previous color. And then next we have some high dive. This is going to start more of the teal or aqua color combination. And this is where my stencil moved a little bit. But that is okay. Embrace the imperfection is my motto. I so loved how these backgrounds turned out that I don't even care. I really, really love these 2 products. You guys, if you've been following me a while, you probably know I love underwater scene cards. I don't know why, I just do. And so it's always fun to try to find ways to create new designs. These products are amazing. I've been wanting to use the Narwhal set that came out a release or 2 ago from Simon Says Stamp, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity. This is the Audrey blue ink. And then finally, we're going to finish with MALIBLUE. Simon Says Stamp has some really amazing ink colors as well. I know I've been sharing quite a bit, maybe some Pink Fresh inks. I get asked a lot what inks I use a lot of. I use a lot of Simon Says Stamp, a lot of Pink Fresh Studio, and a lot of Lawn Fawn. Those are probably the 3 main inks that I use, but I do have others, so it really just depends. I have a swatch book of colors, and that really helps me choose. So we're going to remove the stencil. Look at this. Isn't this so much fun? And again, keep in mind, as those inks dry, it is going to kind of smooth out a little bit. Now that we have our backgrounds, it is time to embellish and add sentiments. I am so excited that really for this project, with the exception of a couple of little kind of add-on things that you definitely wouldn't have to do. For example, the Slimline nested rectangle that I die cut this panel with, or the scallop border that we're going to use for the A2 size card. Those I kind of consider add-ons. With the exception of those, we are basically using 3 products. We're using the Waves Builder background, we're using a Slimline Wave stencil, and then we're using the Narwhal Friends stamp and die combo. And all of our images, all of our greetings come from this stamp set. I love that because I think it's economical, and I really wanted to show, I created 2 cards with this, but I could have easily created even more. So for this first one, I'm actually doing something that I really, really love, and that's kind of doing a storyboard type of design where it starts up at the top with a sentiment and an image, and then it kind of has extra sentiments going all the way down. You'll notice I stamped those sentiments on my panel with similar or kind of a tone on tone with the same ink colors I used to create the background. So we have swimming by to say hi, in a seal of whales be a narwhal, and you are whaley awesome. I did this on purpose. I really want my sentiments and greetings and the story to flow with the rest of the card and not be glaringly bright. Same goes for our sentiments we're going to use for each card. I'm going to stamp these at the same time. That's hello friend and let's party. We're stamping these on a separate piece of cardstock because there is actually dies that go with this for these, and we're doing an ombre effect. I stamped these with MALIBLUE, AUDREY blue, and High Dive. All 3 colors. You can see it goes light to dark. We're going to kind of let that dry. We're going to grab the coordinating dies, die cut these. One goes for the Slimline, one goes for the A2 sized card. I did these very assembly line style today as far as we did our backgrounds. We're stamping sentiments. Then we're going to stamp the images we're going to use, and then we're going to kind of bring it all together. So in addition to the sentiments, there are bubbles. There's an outline and a solid bubble. We're going to use both. And what I'm going to do is stamp these with MALIBLUE ink first. I'm actually going to trim this panel down so I can just spin it and stamp in all 4 corners. So the base color here is MALIBLUE. And I think, I'm not sure if I stamped these in the same color. I guess I did. Actually, I think I did those in Surf Blue, and this is MALIBLUE. Yes. The first ones are Surf Blue. The second lighter ones are MALIBLUE. Then we're going to clean our stamp, take the outline, and do 1 shade darker for the bubble outline to give it a little bit more definition. Now I actually ended up stamping additional bubbles off camera to use on my cards as needed, just to fill in spots here and there. So the outline color for the MALIBLUE is Audrey blue, and the outline color for Surf Blue is Caribbean blue. And then I totally didn't line this up in the right place for my second stamping, so we'll fix that really quick. It happens. For the remaining images for our card, they are going to be stamped with Lawn Fawn Jellyfish No Line Coloring ink on Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored in with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers for no line coloring. I had a specific idea for my narwhals in mind, and I wanted them all to be very similar or the same, with like deep blue and shadow mauve with like a violet or pale violet underbelly, and then yellow horns. One thing about the horns, I did color them with bright yellow, yellow, and pale yellow, but it's almost a little too bright, if that makes sense. And hopefully when I add my additional color, that will show you the difference that it makes. So I didn't change anything. We're just going to add another color on top. I'm outlining the narwhal in deep blue, which is a very deep dark color that I think blends out really nicely. So I kind of outline and then pull that color out with the shadow mauve marker. A little goes a long way, so use it sparingly and then just try to get a really nice seamless blend. I used a little pink haze for the cheeks on my narwhals to give them a fun, whimsical feel. They're kind of fun and whimsical narwhals anyway. This is the mustard marker, and I'm simply going to kind of trace the design of the narwhal horn there and then blend out with pale yellow or a blender, either one. And that tiny change, just to me, ties it all together a little bit more. You're still seeing those other colors of yellow, but the mustard just warms it up a little bit. Then the underbelly is a little pale violet and blender. I even pulled in a little shadow mauve in places to get a little bit more of a seamless blend. And finally, we are going to finish our image by going back in with a black pen and drawing in the detail for the eyes and mouth. I always love this step because it just brings the image to life. Now, something I did along the way that I don't always do, but it really worked well this time, was I die cut as I went. I'm also adding a little bit more of that deep blue in and then blending out with my shadow mauve. I felt like I needed to deepen and darken a couple of areas. The reason I'm die cutting as I go, it helps eliminate the need for having to be super careful that I'm not smearing that ink before it dries. It is going to take a little bit longer to dry. Zigs are water-based markers. So I die cut that and set it aside, and I'm going to work on my next image. This image I'm coloring right now, I actually stamped twice. I'm not going to show coloring of it twice because I colored it exactly the same, but that is going to be featured on our second card. So our Slimline card has a lot more going on. There is a lot more real estate there to work with. And then our A2 card, I decided to do a little bit more simpler design, but I am going to bring in one of the little star rainbows into that one. So just kind of ways to dress up the cards. They're different yet the same. I hope that makes sense. And one is more of a hello friend card, and one is a birthday card. Not is a more, it is a birthday card. There's a lot of things you can do here just with this Narwhal Friends stamp set. So definitely keep that in mind. If you love narwhals, if you love ocean themed cards or cute images, this is a fantastic stamp set. This is my first time using it and I am loving it. I remember with this release, I had requests here on YouTube asking me to use this stamp set. So hopefully if you were one that wanted to see this used, you are seeing this video and I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to go in and add a little mustard to the narwhal horn. If you are like me and you want to warm that up, definitely my color choices for coloring were influenced by the backgrounds. I do a lot of background building first. That is not unusual for me. But I knew I kind of wanted to use these colors, but I will be honest, I stamped these narwhals, or I stamped one of them on a scrap piece of Bristol cardstock, trying out some different color combinations, and the first color combination I used just did not work. I'm really glad I chose to go with the deep blue instead. It makes a huge, huge difference. I think it matches my ink colors much nicer. I went just too bright. I tend to go bright when I use zigs. They're more of my go-to colors. I don't use deep blue all that often. I love it. I just tend to go kind of bright rainbow or pastel rainbow or whatever you want to call it. And so some of my color choices here are just a little bit out of the norm, which I love. I love kind of trying to push myself to do something different than what I normally do. And then we're just going to color this last guy and die cut him. You'll notice in the finished cards, they are finished with a lot of stars, a scattering of stars everywhere. That ended up being stamped separately and colored separately because I wasn't exactly sure until I got the narwhals and my sentiments laid out on my cards what exactly I needed. This is kind of indicative of how I create. I will, if I'm not exactly sure, which pretty much probably 9 times out of 10, I'm not always exactly sure, I will do the images I know for sure I'm going to use. And then from there, because the stars and the little stars with rainbows are smaller, it's really, really easy to say, yes, I want to add more of these or more bubbles or whatever the case may be. So here are our backgrounds. How cute is that? Let's go ahead and attach our main sentiment, so the larger sentiment that's been die cut. I'm going to adhere these to my card backgrounds with foam adhesive. And at this point, my A2 sized background over on the left side is still A2 sized. But you can see there is a lot of real estate. There's a lot of open space there. And I really didn't feel like doing more narwhals on this card. I wanted something different. So I'll show you what I do to fix this here in a second. But let's add foam adhesive on the back of all of these. I love to pop things up a little bit with foam adhesive squares. I'm just trying to get a really nice coverage all over the back of my images and my sentiments. I find these little backing papers all over my house. And then we're just gonna position this guy kind of up here at the top. So hopefully it kind of tells kind of quote unquote a little story. So we have hello friend, and then of course next to that it says swimming by to say hi. We're going to attach these bubbles up here that I dropped. And because I'm still working on, and I know that I'm going to be stamping and coloring and die cutting additional images, I actually added glossy accents to the bubbles at this point so that it could sit and dry while I go and do that extra work here in a minute. Then the next phrase is in a sea of whales, be a narwhal. That's where our next little image is going to kind of go next to. And of course, down at the bottom, it says, you are whaley awesome. And our last little guy is going to sit right above that. And I'm adding bubbles all the way throughout, kind of coming, I guess the first one comes up from the sentiment, and then the next 2 bubble images are going to come up from our narwhal. Aren't these chubby little narwhals just so cute? I love them. I think they are so much fun. I so much enjoyed these projects. I was really, really excited when I saw this waves builder and then the Slimline waves stencil. I think these are going to get tons of use in my craft room. Speaking of craft room, that video is coming. I will tell you guys, I'm actually working on my craft room, and that is why I have not shared anything. I'm currently in the process of building all the furniture, multiple IKEA trips, and I'm completely, well, not completely, but a lot. I'm redoing my craft room. It's the only room in the house that I moved to here almost 2 years ago that I have not kind of redone. I've been using stuff that doesn't fit my space very well. It works good enough, but I'm excited to kind of have it all organized. And I'm taking videos, and it will take me a little bit of work, but I'm really, really excited to kind of take you guys along on that journey with me as I finish up my new craft room. It's going to be pretty simple, but I'm excited. So I did trim down the A2 sized background with my paper trimmer. It measures 3 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall right now, but all that white space on either side I don't love. I think that's an awful lot of white space, but as far as building my scene on this, I really like the width because I think it fits my sentiments and images much, much better. Just like before, we're popping up our sentiment, we're popping up our narwhal. And then we're adding glossy accents to the bubbles. Now, we are going to be stamping the sentiments on this panel as well. I kind of thought I might do sentiment strips. In fact, I stamped one. I did not like it. And I ended up stamping both of the phrases, the happy, happy birthday and have the best day ever, on this panel. And we'll do that here in a second. I have die cut one side of this Simon Says Stamp Soft Navy cardstock with a Scallop Stitches die. This die has been out for a while. It is one of my all-time favorites. I have used it so many times. I have not used it recently, and so it was kind of exciting to pull that back out. I love it for creating nice, long, decorative borders. This is going to frame up our panel perfectly. I like the deep navy color of it. It is a very soft navy, as the name says. It's one of my favorite colors from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm using my the grid on my glass mat to help me line that up perfectly and then die cut the other side. So there is our panel. We're going to glue that in place. I love it. I think that's going to look so, so good on our white card base. So let's go ahead and attach that. And it's got stitching detail as well as the scallop. And I really want my panel to fit in between the stitching details so that the recipient can see that. Framing it up and kind of resizing that background a little bit works so much better for the design of this card. Then we're going to stamp our sentiments, as I started to mention earlier, with some soft navy ink. So this is a different color of ink than we used in the background, but still not black. I purposely picked the soft navy because it's going to show up, but it still coordinates with the rest of our design. Extra bubbles have been stamped and die cut. And now we are going to stamp, color, and die cut all of our fun little stars and rainbows images. Now, I didn't want to go with a bright colorful rainbow here because these cards don't really call for that. So in order to create a rainbow effect that's going to work for these particular card designs, I'm still going to go with my yellows for the stars. This time I'm not going to use mustard. I'm going to keep them the bright yellow, yellow, and pale yellow. But for the rainbow, we're going to use deep blue and shadow mauve, just like we did for our narwhals for one of the rays. But for the other two rays, we're going to use light violet and pale violet. That's going to obviously coordinate with our background. And then We're going to use turquoise green and green shadow, which is going to coordinate with the teal and aqua part of our background. And then finally, I'm finishing with deep blue and shadow mauve. I did it last. It tends to migrate if you accidentally touch it with the tip of your marker. It's kind of like red. I always recommend doing anything in red last. Same thing with the deep blue. Then this is going to be centered kind of down here along the bottom. Because it's a little bit bigger image, I am going to pop this up with foam adhesive like I've done for the sentiment and narwhal. But we're going to glue in place a scattering of the stars and glue those directly to the background. How cute is that? I just love, love, love it. Now, I did a few stars, but I ended up stamping, I think, two more trios of just the stars to use on my other card, because I did some stars here and I was like, oh, I need at least one more up here at the top. And I used both of the little itty bitty ones, and I really like the little itty bitty ones. So I'm going to stamp a few more of those off camera and die cut those to use on our second background. And then I'm just die cutting as many of these with one pass of my machine as possible. So lining them up, taping them down with repositionable tape. They are pretty teeny tiny, but I love them. If coloring little stars is not your thing, definitely some star confetti, little die cut pieces or whatever would be cute as well. I'm loving, loving, loving how this is turning out. Let's go ahead and glue this to our card base. And this eliminates some of that white space on either side while still giving some white space. So I like the white space, but it's just not quite as prominent. On the stars, we're going to take Nuvo Crystal Drops in White Blizzard and add these on top for a beautiful, shimmery, glittery effect. So much fun. Let's go ahead and finish our Slimline card. We'll add a scattering of stars all over this. Oh, whoops. I hate when that happens. I just left it. I just covered up the glue that's on the top with some Nuvo Crystal Drops. Hopefully that disguises it. I don't even think in the finished card you can tell. I love the little pops of yellow in all of the blue and purple. And then we're going to adhere it to a Slimline card base to finish. Here is a look at both of the finished cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these Ocean Waves background cards featuring Simon Says Stamp, stamps, dies, and stencils. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring products from the Simon Says Stamp Rainbows release that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.